What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another edition of On the Road to Victory. I'm your host, Jimmy Smith, and with me today is a very special guest, Mr. Marc Farzetta. Thanks for joining us today, Marc.
Thanks for using a picture where I'm tan and stuff. That's I don't know. I don't think I've ever gone tanning in my life, but if I did, maybe I just got drunk and went to a tanning bed and took that picture. But thank you. No, it's good to be on with you, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
Happens to the best of us, Marc. And I just want to say, hey, look, man, you're looking good right now. You're glowing, dude.
Good. I came on here to be flattered. This is good. Yeah. We're off to a good start then.
Yeah. Well, you just might have to be, because honestly, you are somebody that I totally respect. And I was so excited when you responded back and wanted to come on. So I wanted to just pick your brain a little bit, sit here and talk a little shot, man. Let's get into some birds. How you feeling about that, man?
I was surprised that it was only Doug Peterson as the only change that was made. Wrapping up the season, talking about it with some people, it just seems odd to me that he's the one whose finger was pointed at by Jeffrey Lurie and say, well, you obviously have to go, and I'm going to stick with this Howie guy and see how it goes. But I'm not going to err on the side of negativity when it comes to this move, because I actually think Nick Sirianni is going to be a good coach, and it's just one of those hunches. I was one of the few people that actually liked the hiring of Doug Peterson. I was like, you know what, it'll be good after the discombobulation that Chip Kelly presented. Go back to that comfort blanket. Go back to that the warm pair of slippers, your favorite pair of slippers with Andy Reid, and just put that jacket on for a second, which is exactly what Doug Peterson brought to the table here. Somebody you're a little bit more familiar with, somebody that was going to let Jeffrey Lurie feel like he still owned the team. So I was in favor of that. This Nick Sirianni hire, I actually like in an isolated case. If you told me ex-NFL team was hiring Nick Sirianni to be their head coach, I'd be like, I could see why that'd be a good hire. An offensive coordinator in an offensive-minded league, as we all know. Frank Reich's been here forever. Frank Reich spoke glowingly about him. And it's funny, whenever somebody talks glowingly about somebody else who they should, like their assistant coach, for instance, or their coordinator, I always wait for that little extra. Like, it's not just Frank Reich up there at the podium at the Combine last year saying, oh, well, Nick Sirianni is a very good coach. We're excited to have him on. No, he was like drooling. He was like, this guy's amazing. I love this guy. I have to have him on my team. He was the first call I made. That was very interesting to me. So when he said all that back then, and then the Eagles obviously got him recently, I thought, oh, this could be something. And then there's the obvious, just alone, the Frank Reich connection, where he has coached up Carson Wentz during Carson Wentz's best season. Nick Sirianni has that lifeline to go to with a guy like Frank Reich. So I actually think that this is a good hire. The fact that he's bringing in his own guys, and they're not guys that are appointed by Howie Roseman or Jeffrey Lurie that we know of, but being that they're all Colts guys or guys that have a background connection to Sirianni, I think it's a great thing. So I do think this is a step in the right direction. Just judging the coaching hire alone, still the problem remains, and it's a huge problem, Howie Roseman's draft picks.
Oh, Marc hits the nail on the head there. That's something we've talked about on the show over and over again. And near the end of the year, everybody calling for Howie's head, and rightfully so. And a lot of people's heads, because everything was just falling apart. When things are going bad, everybody's just losing their mind, especially the fans. So you saw that people were mad, but I was saying it. I don't think Howie Roseman's going to be the one that takes the fall, because that's Jeffrey's lapdog. And unfortunately, here we are, Marc, and you said it yourself. Howie Roseman's still here. And the one thing I held on to near and dear to my heart was the fact that we had John Dorsey. And I thought, okay, maybe we're going to give him more permanent role and player personnel. He's going to take over that Andrew Berry, Joe Douglas kind of role, maybe.
Right.
Well, that didn't happen, and now he's on the Detroit Lions along with Deuce Staley, Dave Phipp. So taking everybody from us. I was a little upset about that. So obviously you're feeling a certain way about Howie as well. I'd like to hear that. But Nick Sirianni, he intrigued me as well. I thought, man, a 39-year-old guy, when we brought him in, and then the next day he was brought back again, thought, whoa, I saw an article from Mike Kay. He was really hitting how much that meant. And I thought, man, this is really making sense. This guy could be our next head coach. And like you said, you saw the praise from Frank Reich, and it wasn't just, your average trying to be nice to somebody. So I think that this guy, you mentioned the Frank Reich roots, Carson Wentz, all that. That's something that everybody was looking at like, oh, we're actually going to try to fix this team. Guys that are all, they know quarterbacks, wide receivers. You mentioned, our new logo here, the Chiefs, as we've taken all the Colts and Chargers, anybody he's worked with. Now, That's something I talked about in the days leading up to these assistant coaches. A lot of people, I want to hear this guy, certain names that they've, heard of or played with in Madden. So they know that this guy, he's a head coach. So
that's how I know they're good. I played with them in Madden. Yes.
Yep. It totally happened. So how do you feel about some of the personnel that is being brought in? Some people, that don't follow football too closely might not know these names, but these are all guys that have been throughout his career with Nick Sirianni. So I'm liking the move so far. So I wanted to kind of pick your brain. And one thing happened, and I had to whip up a graphic right before we came on. Brian Johnson, I think that was a great move to bring him in as the quarterback's coach. Somebody who worked at Florida, but there's some deep stuff there with him growing up. His Jalen Hurts' dad was his high school football coach, and he tried to get Hurts. So how are you feeling about this staff so far, and kind of lead into what you think they're going to do with this quarterback situation that we have here?
Well, I think we can both agree you never hire a coach to be a guy that's going to half-ass the job, right? You can't just say, okay, you'll be our coach, but basically just call plays and we'll handle everything else. Even though I know popular, conventional wisdom is that eventually what it evolved into with Doug Peterson. But if you're going to go in, you're going to go all in with something like this. You have to go all in. And that's what they're doing right now with all these different hirings, because they're all connections to Sirianni. And that means that they're going all in on their head coach. Okay, fine. You pick your staff. You get your defensive coordinator. You get your linebackers coach. You get your offensive coordinator. You can go ahead and get your special teams coach, quarterbacks coach, all that. All these are things that let you know that the Eagles are very much invested in Sirianni. And when you have a young coach, there's always the potential that this is a very long-term deal. This is something that they're going in for the long haul. Well, that ain't happening unless he is hiring his own guys. I know I put out a tweet that a lot of people looked at and they thought I was just making Nick Sirianni a yes man, because I basically had a dialogue where he was saying yes to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman for everything. That was more of a shot at Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, because I think it's going to be status quo for those guys for the foreseeable future. But when it comes to Sirianni, I think he is going to run his coaching staff the way he wants to run it. I think he will have the power of play calling, and I think we all know why, because he's coming from the Frank Reich school. He's an offensive coordinator himself. Didn't call plays there. Will most likely call plays here. And I think that this is something that the Eagles, to their credit, are doing exactly what they should do when they hire a new head coach. Push everything to the middle of the table and say, you know what? Maybe we were a little too hands-on with Doug, especially towards the end. Maybe we were too hands-on with Doug, especially with naming Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator like 12 hours after they hired Doug Peterson himself. So it makes you think that the Eagles are maybe, and this might be optimistic, maybe learning from past mistakes and actually letting the head coach run the football operations part of this as far as the football team goes, and taking a step back, and still, unfortunately, in my opinion, and it seems like yours too, Jimmy, and unfortunately still very much going to be a part of that draft process and have final say of whoever they select in the upcoming NFL draft.
You're right. And it scares me mightily, Mark. I'll be real with you. But something you mentioned, you could look at it both ways. Is it a positive or a negative? And you'll get both of them from the fans, but Nick Sirianni, you said it. He's young. He's building his own staff, and maybe he is our coach of the future for a long time. So you allow him to do that. And that allows Howie and Jeffrey to stick to what they're good at in their minds. Okay. Yeah, right. In their mind. Let's just clarify that. But you're right. I'm petrified that John Dorsey's out of the building. I don't know if they have a plan in place to try to bring somebody that has experience with player personnel. But holy hell, Mark, I'm a little scared. This upcoming draft. Someone asked a question here. Can someone explain this Kyle Pitts talk? Classic case of the Eagles fans overthinking. Now, this is the kind of thing that we now have to worry about. Howie Roseman's in charge. I mean, I've seen the chatter about, would you seriously take a tight end, Kyle Pitts? Now, he's more than a tight end. The kid's phenomenal. Mark Chase or Devontae Smith are there. Mm-hmm. What's your move? Are you adding a playmaker, linebacker?
I figure this. I feel like there's an idiot-proof wide receiver that is going to be very much available for the Eagles. And look, if you want to, you can talk all you want about correcting, and that's a fine pick, and I get all the things he can do, and that's great. But I feel like there's an idiot-proof wide receiver right there, and he'll most likely be available at 6, and that man's name is Devontae Smith. I make that happen. I go out and I get him, because you can talk about all this adorable stuff about how, we're going to correct Carson Wentz. We're going to fix Carson Wentz. You know how you can fix Carson Wentz? Go get him a target. Go get him a deep threat, somebody that you know has great hands, somebody you know can run every route of the route tree, somebody that can go out there and make your plays. And that's a guy that can go out there and make their plays. That's the guy that can do it. And Howie has suffered every single year at the hands of everybody else in the NFL. And we all know about Metcalf. We all know about McLaurin. We certainly all know about what Justin Jefferson, who I wanted, by the way, out there in Minnesota, just tearing it up. So for me, I think that you have to look not just about number one need, which is still a weapon for Carson, but you also have to think about a guy that can get into the end zone almost with great regularity. And that's exactly what Smith can bring to the table.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I'm ecstatic about Jamar Chase, watching him last year, and then Devontae Smith with Chase being out. It was all eyes on him, and I fell in love as well. I
am smitten.
Yeah, dude, I've been making highlight videos, just watching his tape and just being like, is this guy real? And, everybody, he's too skinny. He can't gain weight. He can't put on muscle. Sure, that's never
happened.
Walk
him down 9th Street a couple times. He'll pack on the pounds, man.
Randy Moss was too skinny too, right? Wasn't Randy?
Yeah, the things worked out.
Okay. Now, I'm not comparing him to Randy, and I'm just saying.
No, he is already Randy Moss. That's what I got out of that statement.
Yeah. Well, how Eagle fans will take it. Damn you! But it's literally, you hit the nail on the head again. You have a surefire pick at 6 with one of these guys, and Devontae Smith, if he's available, my God, you talk about his route running. He could do it all, actually. Now, the thing is, we have, I think, all of those pieces separated into different players. You have Fulgham, who came on out of nowhere. He can go up and get it. Oh, yeah, he looked good. Needs to work on that route running. I know a lot of people blame that on Doug, him not getting involved. I think a lot of defenses were figuring him out, and a lot of corners were playing him on the line. So he needs to work on things. Jalen Reagor, speed guy, but, jack of all trades, moving around, Z receiver. Then you got your slot possession receiver, Greg Ward. Devontae Smith or Jamar Chase, it doesn't matter. They can do all of those things. And you said it. You give yourself a number one. That lets all your issues go right down the drain, because now you give yourself a real weapon, and then those other receivers get to flourish, and they're not relied on as that. Who is number one? We were questioning it all year. It's like, get yourself an X receiver. So
absolutely. And the Eagles do need a tight. I will say this. I think we all know at this point, when you see a man break down to this press conference, he's done here. So Zach Ertz is all but done here in Philadelphia. And I know this, not just about a Frank Reich offense, but also Nick Sirianni and what they did out there in Indianapolis. They love 12 personnel. And the Eagles have always loved 12 personnel. So if Howie and Jeffrey Lurie do have a lot of say in whatever happens, they'll probably agree on 12 personnel. So I see the Eagles going out there and still getting another tight end in the draft. Maybe not that high, but still another tight end that can run along with Dallas Goedert.
I love it. And that's something that, we've talked about here on the show, because that's correct. 12 personnel. They run 13 personnel, even with Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox, and Trey Burton. You'll find this amusing. I tagged Trey Burton in something. I was like, hey, man, love to have a little reunion. And people are like, F him. He sucks. He ends up liking the tweet, and then he starts liking the comments about him sucking. I'm like, oh, my God, dude. Like, brutal. He's not coming back.
Oh, he's involved in the greatest play in the history of the franchise. That guy, he sucks. Yeah, okay. He wouldn't even run the play. You remember the story? He wouldn't even run Philly special. I think it was, it was against the Eagles. He wouldn't run it. He said the night before they were supposed to play the Birds, he went to Brian Nagy and was like, dude, my anxiety's through the roof. There's no way I can throw that ball in the end zone. And they're like, all right, we'll get somebody else to do it. And then the rest is history. But yeah. Tell a guy like that he sucks. It's amazing.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, come on, dude. And it's hilarious. But you're right. Don't sleep on tight end position. I just don't know when you have receivers like that. Mentioned here, you've got guys that, Surtain, you've got Caleb Farley, you got corners. We surely need an outside corner. We need linebackers, Micah Parsons, so many names out there. But the great thing is we've got the 6th pick in this draft. So we could actually nag somebody pretty good. It's going to be pretty hard to mess that up with the 6th pick there. You've got some teams in front of you that I think will still allow you to get anybody that you really need, some tackles, some quarterback play in front of us. But I think that 6th pick, it's going to be hard to mess it up, Howie. But if anybody could do it.
Yeah, it's Howie.
It's Howie.
It's hold my beer is what it is, unfortunately.
For real. And look, I'm not trying to just sit here and bash you, Howie, but we all saw the issues, and we knew that it started at the top. And it started with you not just drafting a quarterback this year, not just passing up on DK or JJ. It was plenty of moves throughout the years. You talk about Bobby Wagner being passed up, for who would we take? Michael Kendricks, I think it was. That's a smart move. So, I mean, you could sit here all day and talk about people that we didn't draft, but
Yeah.
it's asinine at this point to sit here and not think that he wasn't part of the problem. And the one thing I said this year was, okay, let's get somebody in here to at least help him because he's probably not going to go anywhere. So that was the whole John Dorsey thing.
Sure.
Now he's gone. And I guess the other part of it was Doug Peterson, man. I don't think he was the most to blame, but I think he was kind of unwilling to change. And it was like, look, man, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting change. And you won't give up play calling. Sure, you gave Press Taylor. That worked great. And then when you get your interview, you tell them that's who you're going to bring as your offensive coordinator. What's he thinking? What was he thinking? Did he just want out? Was he trying to get himself fired?
I think, Jimmy, you, me, and all of the Philadelphia fan base did the same thing you just did, which is like facepalm, because I think I was with a lot of people. I was with a lot of people who were saying it can't just be Doug, it can't just be Howie. It's either both of them are back or both of them are gone. And you were taking up arms almost for Doug because you're like, this guy has rallied this team before. I mean, look, they were almost in the playoffs again. Yes, I know that they deserve it. No, but they were almost in the playoffs again this year. True. But Doug has that team still playing on all cylinders almost all the time. It's just whether or not they're going to be good enough. And a lot of that comes from the talent that's drafted and traded for and brought in here and signed and all that. So when it was just Doug, and then reports start to come out about how Doug's great idea to help solve everything is Press Taylor being elevated to offensive coordinator, I was like, I think everyone in Philadelphia went, no, Doug, we're rooting for you. We want you to be successful. Don't give us Press Taylor. And look, Press Taylor might be the next brilliant mind in Philadelphia. Now, the only evidence that's right in front of us right now to suggest that he's not is the fact that Carson Wentz has only regressed as Press Taylor has gotten more responsibility. But there has been so much slander thrown the way of Press Taylor when nobody really knows Press Taylor. We don't know anything about him. And the only thing that we really know is still the most important thing. The quarterback that he's had his hands on, as he's had his hands on him, that quarterback has gotten worse exponentially since he's taken over.
You're right. I mean, you feel bad for him taking the brunt of it, but it's like if all we've got is that little piece and we see that somebody's taking it, man, and Press has been getting it rough. It's like the Mike Groh, Carson Walsh situation all over again. And look, these guys, it's just regression. And you don't understand it when you see a guy MVP level in his second year help this team get to that playoff spot they were in to win the Super Bowl, man. And I know a lot of people don't want to give him credit, but it's like, yeah, he clearly was part of that team. So I love Carson Wentz. And this year was tough, when things were getting rough. And we saw it was the offensive line. Miles Sanders was out. The receivers they were so young and raw. Alshon and Deshaun were out. It was tight ends even were hurt.
Right.
You look at the defense struggling at times, a lot of times. Sometimes they stepped it up. But, I mean, it wasn't just Carson. But I was excited when Jalen Hurts came into play because I think we all knew. We talk about the definition of insanity. I think we knew what would have happened. He got benched for that Packers game. I think we knew he would have got murdered against the Saints with that pressure they put on people. So having Jalen Hurts, he came out, he beat him. That was crazy. Like getting that just straight momentum and seeing a crap division give us an opportunity. Is there hope? So that kind of raised the bar for Jalen Hurts in a lot of fans' eyes. Like that's their guy now. How are you really feeling? Like, I think in my mind, and I've not changed it once, is that it would come down to a competition. Why would you pay a guy $120+ million and then you draft a guy with the second round pick? He's very cheap right now. So you have a backup. It's a very important position. Mm-hmm. And if your starting quarterback can't handle pressure and can't handle someone being behind him, then maybe he's not the guy. So how are you feeling about this quarterback situation? How do you see that playing out?
I've said since the end of last year, or most recently, and since the end of the Eagles' regular season, I should say, I've said that there has to be a quarterback competition. There's like it only. I love this. This whole thing has allowed me to use this word. It behooves the Philadelphia Eagles to have Carson Wentz be the starting quarterback next year for the obvious reason: money. Now, if there was a bunch of money attached to Jalen Hurts, I would want him to be the starting quarterback because he's going to be difficult to move on with all that money. So it only makes sense for the Eagles for him to move on because who's going to come in here and just say, yo, no problem, cash for Carson Wentz, no cap hit, no problem, we're good. Nobody. That ain't happening. And for people that think that is going to happen, Are you rooting for or against Carson Wentz? Like, do you think he's a good quarterback or a bad quarterback? Because nobody's doing that for a bad quarterback. So I don't think he's going to come out here and prove how great he is, and all of a sudden they can trade him through training camp. No, the only thing he can win in training camp is the starting job. Does he have the edge because of the money? Of course he does. Does he even have the edge because of more NFL experience? Of course he does. But if he can't go out there and play, bottom line is the better quarterback has to be the starting quarterback for the Eagles. Now, the last time you had a quarterback competition straight up, and people don't want to admit this, but this was straight up, Mike Vick versus Nick Foles in the first year of Chip Kelly. Nick Foles went out there and played terrible in the preseason. Mike Vick went out there, played great in the preseason. I remember Les Bowen from the Philadelphia Inquirer asking the question of Chip Kelly at the press conference. I was sitting right next to him, and he just said, Chip, after that game, how do you tell Michael Vick, he's not the starting quarterback? And it's like, yeah, well, you got me. And we're going to have another one of those. If Carson Wentz comes out and plays well in the preseason, he's the starting quarterback. If Jalen Hurts comes out and plays better, he's the starting quarterback. Again, there'll be a little bit of a grading on the curve for Carson simply because of the money and also because Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, I feel, are very much rooting for him.
Yeah, that was part of the pre-hire process for these coaches, right? That they were saying, like, hey, they wanted to know what the coach thought about Carson Wentz and what they were going to do with him. So this is a guy that's coming in to not necessarily just fix, but we want to see what he can do. If he can, per se, fix it. But if not, it's going to be Jalen Hurts. Like you just said, this is a clean slate, and that's something this creates when you have a young coach. His first time being head coach. What do you think he wants to do? Win. He wants to stay the head coach. So he's going to pick the best quarterback. May the best man win. So I think a lot of people, they have strong feelings. They hate Carson or they hate you. And it's like, why? They're Philadelphia Eagles. I like them both. And I wish the best of them the best of luck. And I hope that the best man wins. And unfortunately, if we move on, I really don't want to see them go in this division because that's the kind of stuff we do.
I just want the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles to be better than other quarterbacks around the league. I honestly don't care if it's Carson Wentz. I don't care if it's Jalen Hurts. I want whoever is lining up behind Jason Kelce next year to be the best possible option to play that position. It's just like any other sport. Like people go back to the Sixers for a second with like Sam Hinkie. I don't care if he was successful or not. I just wanted the Sixers to be successful. When there are different like subsections of fans, like I hate trying to follow that. I'm sorry. I'm still rooting for just the laundry. That might seem shallow, but as long as the guy that's wearing that jersey is playing well, yeah, I'm all for it, man. There you go.
All about that logo, man. And people get pretty rowdy with me sometimes. They don't like that. And it's like, look, I'm always going to be ride or die with my birds. And look, whoever it is, I'm going to roll with them. And the past few years, man, when I started doing this, people tell me to give up on Nick Foles. Look, that was rough. And then the next couple of years, we struggled with injuries. And somehow Doug Peterson, like you said, rallied the troops. Carson coming back from injury. It's not like this team, people try to make us out to be the Browns and the Jets all of a sudden, for the last 20 years. It's like, look, man, we're not, in my mind, that far off. It may take a couple of years, but like you said, I was excited about Doug Peterson too. That unknown. And it was kind of not just the unknown, the little bit that we did know was something familiar. And you speak about, Andy Reid and Doug Peterson. Well, now we have, what did everybody love? And what did everybody clamor for the last few years? Because Frank Reich left. And of course, Frank Reich was the only person that won the Super Bowl. So everybody and their mother, we got to get him back somehow. Or now it's Carson Wentz is being traded to Indy. Well, what did the Eagles do? They take Indy, bring it to Philadelphia. So I think this is the perfect guy that's going to do something like that. But then we talk about, I mentioned earlier, Brian Johnson. Now you got people, because, Jalen Hurts' dad coached him and he likes Jalen Hurts, trying to get him to Mississippi State, and it's going to be a battle, guys. I think that's what you should read into it. They brought guys for both of them. So they're both going to succeed. Nobody wants to see anybody fail. Like, what is this? And it's, one of the questions here, it's, look, we're not saying that we want Ertz to leave. You saw him crying. I felt like crying. I love Zach Ertz. It was heartbreaking to see that. But let's get real, guys. You saw that his play, it dipped a lot, and then he got hurt. And there was talk that Ravens and Packers were interested in trading for him, and it got realistic. It was like, wait, oh my God, this guy. And you look at the cap situation, and it makes it very easy to see that he just might not be here. So I think that's all we're saying.
I hope he's back. I mean, I've attended this man's charity events, and I've gotten a chance to talk to him a bunch of times, and they do a lot for this community. They did a lot in Kensington. They're trying to do a lot in Kensington still. I want him back in Philadelphia. He's a pretty damn good tight end too. Let's not forget about that part of it. But I would be shocked if Zach Ertz is playing football for the Philadelphia Eagles next year.
Me too. And if you asked me this time last year, I was telling people you're drunk. You don't even know you're high. You don't know I don't know what you're on because you're out to sea. Well, now I'm like, well, let's get real here. He wants more money and he deserves it. He's a great tight end, like you said. So, I mean, we've got lots of holes to fill. Mentioned here, secondary is decimated. Yes, we need an outside corner. We don't know what's going to happen with the safeties, Jalen Mills, all that stuff. I mean, I'm sure maybe people like Patrick Peterson, he's a little older, but there's guys also keep in mind when coaches bring in, past coaches they work with, they also bring a lot of players, so you could see a lot of Colts or Chargers maybe coming with that, like these certain coaches. I'd be okay with that. Xavier Rhodes or a Malik Hooker, people have mentioned, Marlon Mack, Trey Burton, don't hate on me. But, I'm all about the change, and that's what we're headed toward. And that's what I think gets me excited for the next couple of years, that little bit of unknown that we tasted this year with Jalen Hurts. It's like, hey guys, at the end of the day, when you tune in on Sundays, none of this matters. None of the complaining, none of the arguing, or I know this guy's better than this guy. We just want to see the Birds win. That's all it is, man. So let's just try to give this guy, let's not Andy Reid and Doug Peterson this guy already. And, Chip Kelly's the only one everybody's like, oh, yeah, I can't believe it. And how'd that work out? So
right.
I just think maybe people need to calm down and let's see what happens.
Calm down. Us?
Well, don't calm down. Be crazy.
Impossible.
Yes, be crazy because you always got to be crazy. Always be crazy. But let's try to be behind our birds because now we're in a place in the world where, dude, we're going through this pandemic. People are all on social media. It's like these players are following you. I mentioned Trey Burton like you suck. It's like nobody's gonna want to come here. You're telling them they suck. Like this is real life human beings, guys. And I think that Nick Sirianni's 39.
They're characters in our lives. They have no feelings.
Dude, people get so mad, and I'm like, look, man, when you go through certain things in life, you get a different perspective. And I've always been a diehard fan, but I try to rally behind them, and I've been through way worse seasons than any of the ones that half these people have seen. You know what I'm talking about. Yes, so it's like I try to have a positive outlook. And I really hope that Nick Sirianni is successful. And that's all I really want at the end of the day. And like you said, with the quarterbacks or anything like that, so let's just hope that Howie doesn't fail us in the draft. Let's hope we make the right moves in free agency, build around some of these guys, and maybe we're not too far off. How do you see us doing next season as a new team? Do you think that we're truly going to be a 2 to 4 win team like a lot of people are projecting?
I don't think they'll be that bad. I think they're going to be a competitive team next year. I don't see some type of mind-blowing year for the Eagles where Carson Wentz is all of a sudden looking great again and all that stuff, MVP caliber, all that. I don't think he's looking like that. I think you're going to be flirting with 8-8. I don't think it's going to be abysmal year. I don't think it's going to be an abysmal year. I don't think it's going to be a spectacular year. But I do think it is going to be something that will give us hope for not this year, but next year. I think is what it's going to do. I have too much confidence in a guy like Brandon Brooks coming back on that offensive line and Lane Johnson. And a lot of it obviously depends on injury, but nobody wants to predict injuries. And I know Brandon Brooks has certainly had his fair share. At some point, that guy's got to play 16 games. At some point, he's got to be okay. So I think when it comes down to the offensive line being much more solidified, or at least solidified, and then it comes down to, I do believe that there is a better version of Carson Wentz than what we have seen over the last 2 seasons. I know even at the end of 2 seasons ago now, when they won that, 4-game winning streak, it was against some subpar competition, but I still think that there is maybe not the 2017 version still in there. I still think there is at least a consistent quarterback in that body, in that North Dakota body. And I think Nick Sirianni, with his connections going back to it with Frank Reich, I think we'll be able to at least channel that talent again. Not to that level by any means, because I think that ship has sailed, unfortunately. But I do think we're going to have a much better quarterback, which isn't bragging. I mean, you're talking about the worst rated quarterback in the league last year. I think we could at least get to a top half of the NFL type of quarterback again with Carson Wentz in his first year under Nick Sirianni.
I agree. And I think, you hit the nail on the head with a lot of this stuff. And that was one of the things, and I want to hear what Nick Sirianni has to say. And that's something, we've all been, sitting here waiting. One day we're going to hear from Nick Sirianni, but I think we'll get a clearer picture. But yeah, let's just ride with our birds, baby. And let's hope that this team can pick things up. I love what you said, 2 to 3 year plan. I mean, that's in my mind, that's kind of where I'm at. Let's not just jump on them the first year, maybe an 8-8 season. I'd be okay with that. You probably win the division with that, which is embarrassing as hell. But I love it. And Marc, we're going to get heading out here, but it has truly been a pleasure to have you on. I want to leave this time here. I know I heard a little rumbling. I saw a post of yours. Something coming up here? You got something in the works? And also, do you got any final words before you head out?
Well, first off, thanks for asking. I have something starting up very soon, Monday. I know I'll be back in the saddle in one way or another, so I'm excited about that. I can't get into it. Literally, all this is coming down to the wire, so I can't get too far into it. But I can't really elaborate too much on what the tweet was, other than what it said, which is just that it feels good to know this is the last week where I won't be hosting a show. So that's that feels nice. It fits real nice.
That makes me feel good. I'll be tuning in. So excited to see that news.
Thank you, brother.
Now I'll leave this time for any final thoughts you have, Marc.
Just keep the faith. I know that it's hard. It's really hard when it comes to what we've seen from Howie in the draft and all that, and hearing that Jeffrey Lurie likes to meddle more than we really thought as an owner. But the fact that he's hiring his own coaching staff, at least that's what it seems like on the cover, I think is a very good sign that this man is going to have a lot more control than what we're used to a head coach having here in Philadelphia. And I think the real test will come, obviously, when the season starts and you get to those 4th and short situations and you get to those 2-point conversion situations. And if he comes out afterwards, whether or not saying, well, the math said to go for it or the guys upstairs said to go for it. No. I want to hear whether or not you wanted to go for it. And I think that's what we'll really get to know how much this guy really has to do with game day decisions, not just in putting his staff together. So I think that I still think there is some optimism here. I got a good feeling. I mean, when Andy Reid was hired, I was like a junior in high school, so all was right with the world no matter what. When Chip Kelly was hired, I was excited, and he got 2 10-win seasons, 1 playoff appearance, and unfortunately, they didn't beat the Saints here in Philadelphia. But and then Doug Peterson had a good feeling. Maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, but I just have a good feeling about Nick Sirianni as the head coach of this football team. I don't have a lot of optimism when it comes to Howie Roseman buying the groceries, as they say.
Marc, I love it. I'm with you 100% on that. That's exactly how I feel. I'm trying to be optimistic about it. I love the Sirianni signing. He was in my top 3, so it was refreshing to hear that. Once we brought him in and the name was brought up, people were, it's got to be Josh McDaniels. That's who it is. And it was, no, let's bring a guy that hasn't had a chance yet and is, like you just said, going to be given the reins to do whatever he pleases. And let's hope this young man learns. He's in a tough city. So you mentioned, let's see if he has those cojones that Doug used to have. So that's going to be, we're all going to be holding him to a pedestal. Unfortunately, I think people will. But hey, best of luck to him. I can't wait to see what the Eagles do this year. But Marc, dude, thank you so much for coming on today. It has been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Hopefully we can get you back on again before the season starts or something. But best of luck to you. Can't wait to see what you're doing Monday. But have yourselves a great day, everybody. Thank you all for tuning into another edition of On the Road to Victory. I will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Birds!